So I'm not exactly known for creating the most functional of 3D printing projects. You probably know me better for creating things like a resin 3D printed alien statue, or this massive Spawn comic book cover, or a huge 8-foot tall Magneto. But today I'm gonna show you 15 different functional 3D prints that I'm gonna be incorporating into my workshop to help me get a little bit more organized. And I'm actually gonna show you an area that I don't think I've ever had in a video before. This is one of my back sort of workshop area. This is all my old kitchen counter and cabinets that Repcord and I installed back here, so I have a little bit better of a workshop area. But for right now, everything just typically is thrown out on the countertops when I'm not using them, or they're scattered around the studio, and I'm always struggling to find exactly where these are located. So what I'm thinking about is transforming this blank wall right here and taking it from this to this with the help of these 15 functional 3D prints. And since I have mostly Dewalt tools, that's the color scheme that I'm going for with a lot of these attachments to try and match these as best as possible. And thankfully, the folks over at SliceWorks have some really beautiful filament that they've tried to color match specifically to some of these manufacturers. So for all of these, I'm gonna be printing with their Pro PLA in Vault Yellow and black. And it goes without saying that I'll have all of the files listed down below. So if you're interested in printing these for yourself, you can do that. But don't think just because I'm printing these for my Dewalt tools that you can't use some of them. A lot of them are very much universally made to work with a bunch of different tools. Or if you have a different brand of tool or mixing and matching, like a lot of folks do, myself included, you'll be surprised at just how many files are out there that others have created and are sharing online for you to freely download and print for yourself. And to start things off, I'm gonna 3D print some brackets for a shelf. This way I can get things hanging or organized on top of the shelf in that corner of my workshop. And there are a ton of different shelving bracket files, but one of the absolute most popular that is out there is a file that was created by Tom Sandlander. And in this case, these were modified by Mikolas and are free to download over on Printables. And I printed these and they look awesome. They are really cool. They're these organically designed, really sturdy shelving brackets here. The only problem that I have with these that I didn't realize until after printing them is that there's actually no mounting point to secure the actual board that you're gonna be setting on top of these. These would be great for any kind of display shelf that you might have. However, I need this to be a little bit more practical and functional, so I'm gonna need to drill some holes through this bracket in order to secure the wood in place. There's also other alternatives that are exactly designed just the way that you'd expect them to be, with different mounting points for the wall as well as to the board that you're gonna be securing to the brackets. So if you wanted to print something that was a little less wild looking, you could go for something a little bit more traditional like these here. And before we drill any holes in the walls and start making a mess, here's a great practical print that's gonna connect directly to your shop vac. And to make sure that you don't end up scratching up any of the wall surfaces and improve the overall sucking factor, you're gonna apply a little adhesive foam backing. And if you don't have that, I just use some craft foam and super glue to just cut out a strip and secure that in place. And now anytime that I drill any pilot holes, this is gonna suck up any debris without causing any kind of a mess. This wooden tabletop is looking great on top of these 3D printed brackets. Now, before I secure the brackets directly to the wooden top, I'm actually gonna take that off and bring it over to my tabletop here, where I'm gonna take some of these 3D printed mounts that I've made and secure them in place just to make this whole installation process easier. And the first one that I'm showing you is these 3D printed holsters for my drill and my impact driver. These fit perfectly for these two sets of drills that I have. And again, there are so many different variations of these that you can find online that will fit any type of drill that you might be working with. And while we're talking about the drills, I should also mention this drill bit mod. That's a super easy print that you can easily attach with an M310 screw directly to your Dewalt screwdriver, and it should fit a variety of other screwdrivers as well. This is such a handy quick print. Then we have these universal Dewalt tool mounts that fit in where your batteries would typically go. This allows me to clip these in upside down directly to this board for a bunch of these tools. And since they're so easy to print, I have a few extra laying around when I buy additional tools, and I'm just gonna install a third right here in case I end up picking up something new during Black Friday. Next, I have this orbital sander that I really wanna find a proper place for, and thankfully I found a mountable option that I printed that allows me to just slide this in upside down and secure it all in place. Then whenever I need it, I can just easily grab it from its mounting location. I just need to make sure I put it back in its proper place. Next, I tried to find a mount for this reciprocating saw, and I could not for the life of me find anything that worked well for the setup of hanging it under. So what did I do? I busted out my iPad and sculpted my own in Shaper 3D. I was then able to get this designed exactly the way I wanted it, so it would mount upside down and hang by the handle here, and was able to get it printed over on my Elegoo Neptune 4 3D printers. And it just so happens that Elegoo is also the sponsor of today's video. I've 3D printed all of the mounts and accessories that you're seeing in this video directly on my Neptune 4, Neptune 4 Plus, and Neptune 4 Max 3D printers. Elegoo has a wide variety of 3D printers to meet your budget needs, as well as the build volume needs that you might have for your different projects. Elegoo also makes some amazing resin 3D printers that you'll typically see me showcasing here in some of my other videos. If you're interested in more information about any of Elegoo's 3D printers, you'll find more information about those down below. Also, another fun fact about all these prints is because they're not really detail oriented, you can print them at an extremely high layer height. So for all of these, I printed them at 0.32 or 0.28 layer height. I used 3 walls, 5 top, 4 bottom, and then about an infill of about 20 to 40, depending on the part that I was printing. Also, a lot of these don't require supports at all, so they're really quick prints for the most part. The one tool that I was not expecting to be able to mount was the circular saw, but I ended up finding this awesome file that allows you to wall mount this, and I used some wall anchors to secure the prints in place and made sure to measure out exactly 10 inches between the top and bottom print. Now, once everything is secured in place, you can easily take this saw and slide it in the top and then set it down in the bottom. All you have to do is brush the guard to the side and it'll seat perfectly against the wall. This is just one of those things that I love about 3D printing, is being constantly surprised by people's creativity with finding solutions to these things. Now, I also have a bunch of different 3D printed accessories and parts for my shop vac, which I use constantly here in the studio. Now, I have an extension set of tubing here that is constantly in the way, so I found a hanger specifically for these that I can easily mount on the wall. This gets them completely out of the way and now have a dedicated storage spot for them. And that hose actually comes from a detailing kit that I got from Harbor Freight that was on clearance because this was a returned product and was missing one of the pieces here, and it was the main piece that I needed to actually be able to connect the red hose to my Dewalt dry vac. And I found this really easy to print hose to hose adapter online and printed this in I think like a half an hour to an hour. And the best part is that it has a little raised notch on the inside that provides a really snug fit between the two ends of those tubes. And there are so many different sets of adapters that you can find online to basically connect any type of hose to any type of connection that you're needing for those wet and dry vacs. This is the type of thing that's just awesome about 3D printing. And specifically, this one file over on Printables has just dozens upon dozens of variations of the different sizes and fittings. So if you're missing an adapter or need one, this probably has exactly what you're looking for. And this is the print specifically right here that got me started on this crazy project of trying to get better organized and 3D printing these accessories. I came to the realization that I have a Dewalt sander that has this little crappy bag attachment on the back end, and I needed a way to attach it directly to my dried and wet vac to help suck up any of the debris. And this was a file that I found online that fits so perfectly. And if you take away anything from this entire video, if you have a sander that has one of these export options here that can go to a dry vac, you have to print one of these connector options. It is a game changer when it comes to the way that I'm now sanding or doing any work here in the studio. It cuts down on so much dust and debris in the air. It's amazing. Another tool that I use all the time here in the shop is a heat gun. This is fantastic for cleaning up any stringing on 3D prints, but there was also a variety of different 3D printed accessories for a heat gun, especially when it comes to mounting these. And specifically, I found an angled holster that is perfect for mounting this inside of my shop. And I ended up cracking mine as I installed it. However, it's still on there nice and snug, and this isn't exactly heavy, so I'm not too concerned about that. You could always reprint that or make the holes even slightly wider before printing one for yourself. Another really useful print is this heat gun stand that's gonna allow you to free up both of your hands while working with your heat gun. Now, I've heard of these, but I didn't know that you could actually 3D print one instead of spending a lot of money and buying one. And this is a 3D printable Cyclone adapter for a workshop bucket that's gonna plug in directly to your shop vac to help filter out any of the debris to help prolong the life of the filter inside your shop vac. I then used a Sharpie on the inside of that larger printed part directly on top of the bucket lid that I'm then gonna need to cut out. Was that the cleanest way to cut that out? Probably not, but it worked. I then marked where I needed to drill out some holes and then connected the printed part directly to the lid. Now for the upper and lower 3D printed parts, there are spots where you can actually bolt these two together, but since they're two PLA printed parts, I'm just gonna use 3D gloop and weld them together. If you've never worked with 3D gloop before, this stuff is absolutely awesome. It chemically welds 3D printed parts together. I also used a little bit of 3D gloop on the exterior and interior of this connecting part here just because it was rather thin and I didn't want it to crack when using it. And after about 30 seconds, these two parts feel like they're nicely joined together. Now, I've never used this before, so we're gonna see together how well this actually works. I'm not sure if I need to further seal it or anything like that, but I have some scraps here of 3D printed waste, of some screws and bolts, and then some of that dust from drilling this lid out. And the whole purpose of this is that it should help sort out some of the larger stuff that you're sucking up versus some of the smaller particles. And I think it worked. Look at this. Here is all the debris inside the bucket, and I believe most of the dust actually went inside the shop vac. As far as I could tell, there was no air leakage anywhere. I had really good suction on this, and it did exactly as it was planned, where it separated out the larger bits from all the fine dust that went directly in to the shop vac. And I just saved myself over 40 bucks with this one 3D print. This is awesome. And if you're anything like me, you have all sorts of different bolts and screws of varying sizes laying around and you have no idea what the sizes are. Well, thankfully there's a 3D print specifically for that, for both metric and imperial size screws and bolts. These are gonna save me so much confusion when I'm trying to figure out exactly how long or how wide, if it's a number 6, if it's a number 8, etc. And my workshop is looking so much more organized now with the help of all these 3D prints. However, that wall space is a little bare. So why don't I use this huge Elegoo Orange Storm Giga and 3D print a massive Dewalt sign. This should be the perfect size to fit on that back wall, and it doesn't weigh a lot as well, so I can just use some command strips to hang it up. This project was so much fun for me to put together. This wasn't my typical 3D printing project that I'm normally doing, and at the end of this now, I am so much more organized than I was previously, and I now have a dedicated space for so many of my tools, and I still have a lot more to go. So if you have any other suggestions on 3D printable projects or other ways to just better organize myself here in the studio, I'm all ears. I also want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support of me making content here. And if you're interested in things like my 3D printer settings, you can find those over in my Patreon. But I also want to say a big thank you to everyone that's continued to watch my videos over the years. I just recently hit 500,000 subscribers. That is just insane to me. I would have never in a million years imagined that that would actually happen when I started this channel. So thank you again to everybody that's been watching, and I'll see you next time.